Boom, and we're live. So we're here with another episode of Elite Encounter with Inder. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm super glad for you to be here. So, what I usually like to do is I like to start off with like a short intro about ourselves and slowly work my way up to Unite. Because the thing about this podcast is not just about Unite, it's about people who play Unite, whether they are pros, casters, or whatever. And I don't know, to get to know them a little bit, the story behind them, and that sort of thing. So, what's a short intro you can tell me about yourself?
My name's Inder. I've been playing competitive Pokemon Unite since pretty much day one of the game. I've been pretty attached to the game. And I've been playing competitive games in general for almost 10 years now, games similar to Pokemon Unite. And I guess a big thing about me lately is because of Pokemon Unite and just Pokemon in general, I've become a pretty big Pokemon fan. I'm really into collecting cards. I play a lot of Pokemon Go now, Pokemon Pocket. I'm just, been obsessed with Legends EA lately. So I'm a big Pokemon fan as of late.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, for me, my situation is a little bit different. I've committed to just playing Pokemon Unite. But you have experience with other MOBAs, right?
That's right, I do. Yeah, I've played a good amount of Dota 2. That's my first MOBA that I really got into. And that was like 2012, so almost like 13 years now, which is funny. Like when I think about the timeline, like 13 years ago is so long ago, but and to a lot of people playing Pokemon Unite, they're like, oh my God, he's like a veteran. Like, he's played games before like this. But when I played Dota 2, I remember looking at everyone else around me being like, man, these guys have been playing Dota for like 15 years. That's not fair. And I was like able to keep up with them a little bit, not so much. And then as the years gone on, like, I bounced around different games, but Pokemon Unite's the one that I've had the most success with and probably the most fun with as well.
Nice. That's good to hear. I myself have been playing a lot of MOBAs like since Dota 1, which was Frozen Throne from Warcraft 3. But I was never really good or anything like that. They didn't have matchmaking back then. Times were different.
They had like the Garena lobbies or something, right? The private lobbies and whatnot. I've heard the stories, but I never actually played. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, League of Legends, of course, and then League of Legends Wild Rift, and I think I played some Arena of Valor quite a bit because they had a mobile version before Wild Rift. But then when Unite dropped, I was like, all right, screw everything else. I'm all in. But yeah, so apart from Unite, like I said, let's start a little bit more about ourselves. What is it that you do outside of Unite and the gaming kind of stuff? What's your real life like?
To be honest, like Pokemon Unite is a big part of my real life. Like, I do a lot of traveling because of it. It's like weird to say, but like a hobby of mine is streaming. Like I enjoy streaming. It doesn't always have to be Pokemon Unite, but a lot of times it is. And I'm just, especially like over the last like 6 months or so, I've really fallen in love again with the game and grinding the game and having like a really focused approach on delivering content and whatnot. But I guess outside of Pokemon Unite, I'm in a very happy relationship with my girlfriend. She has 2 pet bunnies, which I love interacting with. And if it's not Pokemon Unite, it's something else Pokemon. So I'm collecting cards, like just if I turn around, like I have like a whole stack of just cards that I need to send to get submitted to get graded. Like I'm really invested in that hobby. Or I like to go on walks and play Pokemon Go. Like, I'm, what people would say here in NA is I'm drinking the Pokemon Kool-Aid. Like I'm very much, like a prototypical Pokemon fan, like everything Pokemon right now.
Nice. I remember when Pokemon Go came out. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time, and it was during the summer, and it blew my mind because everyone was outside during the summer walking around trying to catch Pokemon, and I never saw so many people in the park ever. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, people are actually outside. Because if you don't know Phoenix, it's mostly just suburbs. So
Right.
people don't go outside much, especially during the summer. But yeah, so you play all these different Pokemon games, you collect the cards and all that sort of stuff. But what is it about Unite that keeps you playing this game and not other games, other MOBA games, for example?
I guess like for me, competition is a really big thing. Like I really enjoy to be competitive. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in games. Like, and I worked in like a more corporate field. I worked in sales, which is a very competitive nature on its own.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have like daily stats tracks, like how many sales did you make the day before, or monthly, and it was like a leaderboard almost in that respect. And it was something that I was good at. And Pokemon Unite, something that I enjoy. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Pokemon IP, but I also happen to be pretty good at the game. And that feeling of like chasing the next big accomplishment is really addicting.
Yeah, I know what
And
you
it's
mean.
really fulfilling as well. Yeah.
I also did some sales. I still do some sales in a small part of my job because I teach English online. I do other projects. I have some online courses. I even have one on Pokemon Unite, how to get into Master Rank.
Nice.
But as you know, that's easy. Anyway, I also do sales, so I understand the competition aspect, which is why I like it too. But more importantly, it's also like the team, the coordination part. And that's kind of where I feel like Unite kind of lacks a little bit because most people don't use voice chat. You have to find a team who uses voice chat to coordinate and all that sort of stuff. It's I think one of the things I'm kind of learning to get into because I also want to participate in tournaments, find a good team who communicates well, that I can vibe with, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm actually curious, what was that process like for you to find a team, or did you make a team, or how did that go?
Yeah, it's a fun story. So before Pokemon Unite came out, years leading into it, I played a MOBA called Heroes of the Storm. So kind of like Pokemon Unite, it's a 5v5 MOBA game, but that one was developed by Blizzard. So characters from Warcraft, from StarCraft, Diablo, Overwatch all came together to make that game. It was a very fun game. So this is about 2017-ish. I was really playing it. And a couple of my friends from Dota joined in, but mostly I made a lot of friends within that game, which is where I met a lot of my long lifetime friends that I'm still friends with today. And those guys are the people that I made my first Pokemon Unite team with. So you know, that would be like, you know, people like Goof GG, Toonslim, who I'm still playing with, Zugrug, Lutano. A lot of people, you know, are familiar with them as faces in Unite as well, for one success story or another. But we all started as friends. Like, we had no idea what or where Unite would take us. But we're like, it's a new game. Let's play the ranked ladder, and we had some success there. And you know, naturally, I was like, okay, we're playing 5-stack ladder. There's a tournament that came out. There's like a Reddit tournament. Let's play in it. We end up winning that tournament. We end up winning a lot of community tournaments until finally UCS starts up a couple months into the game. And I was like, no brainer. We're just going to play. So, you know, it's not really fair to say I made my own team, but it's also not fair to say I joined a team. Like the team made itself almost, you know, it had like its own ethos.
Yeah.
And throughout the years, you know, my philosophy has been like, I love competing. I have the drive to win, but I want to do it alongside people I like and people I'm friends with. So year one was all my friends that I knew from before. Year two, a couple of them step away, but you know, we pick up people that I've made friends with along the way. One of them being Otter VGC or Alan, who I'm playing again with this year. I'm playing again with Toonslim, who I played with last year. I traveled all the way to London. I moved there to play Pokemon Unite, to join Downs Esports.
Wait, you moved there like for good or just for a while?
For 6 months. So
Okay.
yeah. So that's where I was at the start of the year. It's good time to talk about that. You know, I'd taken us like a small hiatus from competing just because We didn't have a team together that was with my friends, and like I said, I like playing with my friends, and I'm in the team Discord for Nouns Esports before I'm on the team. Like, just because Toonsum's on the team is my friend, you know, I help settle like funny debates. Like, you know, two people are arguing, they're like, Inder, like, what's going on? And then one day, one person on the team leaves. And as a joke, I'm like, I could move to London and play with you guys. And everyone's like, okay. And then we start talking and we talk, and Bruv lives, you know, Bruv was in a house at the time that could accommodate an additional person, the defender player on Nouns. Toon was my good buddy. I'd spent some time, you know, me and Gatlu had played a lot of 5-stacks throughout the years. Player I'd played against a lot, had a lot of respect for. You know, we spent some time in Hawaii in the World Championships the year prior. Adesu, who's also on the team, he was a cool guy. I liked him, had a lot of respect for him. So it's like, screw it, let's make a team. So I got up, and within less than 2 months, I, you know, packed my bags, set up all the paperwork to go to London. And from January of 2025, at the start of this year, all the way till the end of April, the duration that the online matches were in EU for UCS, I lived there. We competed. We had a lot of success as a team. Every online like the first online tournament I played in, the first UCS tournament, we got second, which was a heartbreak because, like, you know, you'd expect, oh, top 2, that's great, but you know, for me to move to a new country, it was first or nothing. And I remember like reading Twitch chat messages, like, you know, even people that I know are fans being like, send him home, he's washed, you know,
Yeah.
you know, pack your bags, you know, people are harsh for sure. And I didn't let that get to me too much. I stayed locked in. And after that second place finish, every single UCS tournament that we played online in EU, our team ended up getting first in, which is something I'm proud of. You know, a lot of people will see it as like, there are only the online tournaments, only against the European competition, but there's some good teams in Europe, and it definitely wasn't easy to keep that streak. So yeah, that was something I was really proud of.
I think, you know, moving around is actually a good thing. I personally work remotely, so I have like a more, let's say, digital nomad lifestyle. I like to call it slow traveling. And I think it's actually really good because changing your environment can have such a huge impact on your routines, your habits. And then especially if you're surrounded by other people who can kind of push you to take your whatever you're doing to the next level, it can really like catapult that project or that goal that you have. In your case, it was living with another Unite player and probably playing together a bunch, right?
Yeah, I honestly, like, if you had asked me at any point in the last 10 years, like, would I move to play a game? Would I relocate for even work? I probably would have said no. Like, before joining Unite, I had an offer to move to the West Coast in Vancouver. So I'm in Toronto, which is East Coast Canada. A job offer to move to the West Coast. I had accepted it, and I eventually ended up turning it down to pursue Pokemon Unite. But in the back of my mind, I felt like I was never gonna go. Like, it was really out of my comfort zone. Really, like, it's just something that's like the antithesis to me. Like, I'm very much about comfort and being secure and not taking like life risks like that. But I guess since joining Unite, I was like, okay, playing Unite was a risk in its own right. Like, I'm, you know, leaving everything behind to do something that has no guaranteed income, no guaranteed success. You know, there's no job security in esports like that. And then this past year, like, you know, even like speaking to some of my older friends, they're like, what, like, that's you? Like, when did you become so adventurous? And I'm like, I don't know, like, I don't even feel adventurous. I was like, I need to push myself. I need to get outside of my comfort zone. So it wasn't a decision that I had to sit on, like, oh, should I do this or not? I was just like, I'm going, you know, like, it's a couple of months, I'll be back. Like, I don't know. And it was like a big shift in my personality, and I'm happy I did it. Like,
so would you say that Unite kind of pushed you to get out of your comfort zone in this way?
I would say so. Yeah. Like, I feel like I would have never done this before. But I have had this like thing in the back of my mind, and I've done this before with other things, where almost like being a streamer, I try to imagine like what's like the funniest thing that I could do for, if there was an imaginary audience in my head, what would be the funniest thing for them? Like what would the younger version of me be like, that would be cool to do? And at some point I just was like, I'm just gonna start doing that. It would be funny if I quit my job and started playing esports. And it was, and it is, and I enjoy it. It'd be funny if I just got up and I moved to London for a couple months.
Yeah, man,
just
why not?
to see what
Life
would
is short.
happen. Exactly.
I had a
So
kind of similar experience. I mean, I was working a corporate job at one point, and the lifestyle in Phoenix means like sitting a lot because you drive places, you don't really walk anywhere, and I had some back problems essentially from sitting too much. And at one point it got so bad that I essentially quit my job, or actually more like they fired me, because long story short, it was better for them to fire me than for me to quit. Yeah, so I left that job and I started traveling, and it really opened my mind, like my eyes up to like this lifestyle of traveling. And now when I want to go to a new place, I try not to use the word move, because the word move implies that you're like permanently going to be there. That's why I say slow traveling, because usually what that ends up being is like staying in a place for like 3 months, maybe 1 year, something between that time range. And at some point, like I have this feeling where I'm like, maybe it's time I change my environment. And I'm super lucky because I have a wife who also works remotely, so we can pretty easily get up and go somewhere else. And being in Europe, it's actually quite easy to go to pretty much any European country. But being also American, I can also go to the US. But to be honest, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think something like that is super useful. And, you know, that experience you had with living with another Unite player, I think is super underrated. Like, would you say that living with another Unite player really helped you take your game to the next level? What were some learning lessons there? Because it would be cool to have like a team house or something without any drama, ideally.
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely kept me accountable. Like, you know, there was, and it wasn't necessarily just living with a Unite player, though that did help, but it was more so like I moved, or I slow traveled, let's say. I relocated to a whole nother country. You know, I don't have like the opportunity to be complacent. Like, I have to do my best. I have to be practicing. I have to, you know, I don't get to take like you know, days off or whatever, unless of course I need to rest or recharge, which is also important.
Yeah.
But I think that accountability definitely helped, and it was a different experience. Like up until that point, I hadn't lived with anyone like long term, like, you know, short term stays for sure, like on vacation or not. But other than that, like up until then, I had like, you know, I was always just living on my own or living with my parents. So being around someone, seeing someone, you know, that isn't like your partner or your parent every single day, it was like, you know, a different kind of experience. And what was nice, specifically being with the Unite player, is like after a hard day of practice, you know, we could go downstairs, put the TV on, and, you know, we would have this opportunity to still relax, but still talk about the game and kind of like debrief in a way, like, you know, today was tough, like this happened. Here are some of the challenges that we had, you know, maybe we're having some team problems, like how can we resolve them? And having that like face-to-face connection, as opposed to online where it's like you have a hard day in scrims, a hard day in practice. Yeah, you can sit in the call afterwards and you guys can talk it over, but you don't get that benefit of like the body language, or you don't know how invested the person in front of you is into the issue you might be having. And having someone, you know, that, you know, you could be there for, they could be there for you in a competitive sense was definitely nice. So if I could have a team house, I think that'd be fun. And we've had very, like, you know, we've done boot camps, for example, where we've been in a house together for 2 weeks, and I did one this past summer with Bruv, who I was staying with the rest of Nouns Esports. And that, I think that probably was like a 2-week period where I really was able to accelerate my game to the next level. Like we were practicing 6 hours a day. Every day we were reviewing. I had 4 people. Like we literally took a dining table, 5 portable monitors, and we sat at that dining table every single day, right beside each other, playing the game. And I had, 4 people that could look to me and, give me an honest review of what I did wrong, and I could do that for the other 4 people.
Yeah. It's
so
like
that
the
really
good old
pushed
days
me
when
the
people
most.
used to play, when they used to have LAN parties.
Right, exactly.
One of the other projects that I'm really involved in is in something called co-living, which is essentially like a shared housing type of thing that's more intentional in various ways. Every co-living space is different. And ever since I got involved with it, I always had this realization that you explained, where it's like being around certain type of people, they can influence you in such a big way. And especially people that, are not your parents or family. Because like I've also had this experience in college where like I lived on my own for a bit, and then I lived with roommates, and I always had this realization that like having other people around, it's like a two-way street. It can help each other in both ways. But what if we take it to the next level and have like a group of people that have shared values and shared common goals? So if I combine this concept of co-living with Pokemon Unite, it would be like a team house, and it doesn't have to be permanent. Maybe something in the middle between, like how you described, a boot camp for 2 weeks, or slow traveling, or even just moving to a place for good. Because there are things that are called like pop-up co-living experiences where you stay in a place for like a month, maybe 2 months, something like that. It's always been an idea I've been wanting to do. So if you ever think about organizing one, I'm super involved in the co-living world, and I can help you with that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome. And I think the European kind of culture for that suits it a lot better. Like, you've been in America, you said you were in Phoenix. Like, the economics of like relocation in NA is a lot harder, just in terms, at least where I'm in Toronto, like a very urbanized area. So like being able to have people like do co-living here would be very tough, or in a lot of parts in the US or Canada. But when I was in London, I spent some time in I also ended up going to Paris for a couple of days on vacation as well. Everything just seemed like things were closer together. Everything was more walkable. Like it was a lot more opportunities for interaction. Like I live in Toronto, one of the biggest cities in NA. And even now, it doesn't really feel like I'm like connected at all with people around me. Like everyone's kind of just very dialed into their own thing. I don't really like see strangers or anything like that. I don't see other people. But when I was in London, I was like, oh, it's time for me to go have lunch. I'm just gonna go walk to the market. I'll go grab something. I would see people. Of course, people in London can be a little bit closed-minded as well. But even then, like I don't know, it was just a different kind of vibe, and that vibe doesn't, in my experience, exist in North America.
It does. It's just a small number of them.
Yeah, I guess so.
Pretty much everywhere you go to that has something called like the 15-minute city, where you can have everything you need within a 15-minute walk. There might be neighborhoods in Toronto where you can have that. I know Montreal is quite walkable because of a lot of French influence. But like New York City, if you live in a good neighborhood, you can have that. But to sum it up, in the US, only the expensive cities
Exactly.
have this. And yeah, at one point, like I was deciding, like, okay, I'm gonna live in a walkable city because of all the benefits that you mentioned. And the conclusion I came to was that all the walkable areas in the US are just way too expensive. Like the cost of living is way too high. So I was like, all right, you know what? I have a Romanian background. My parents are Romanian. I also have Romanian citizenship. I know Romanian. I'll just go to Romania. So I went to Bucharest, which at the time was half the cost of living of Phoenix. So it just made so much more sense. And you could walk everywhere. And that's actually, there's a story there as well. When I moved there, that's when I got introduced to this whole co-living concept. But I think in the US, it's also possible. The main thing that's kind of holding it back, I think, is the laws. Like there's a lot of zoning restrictions in terms of what kind of buildings can be built and how many people can live in a house. Even I know in a specific neighborhood in Phoenix called Tempe, which is the student area, by law you're not allowed to have, I think, more than 4 people that are not related in the same house. Like what the heck?
Yeah, that would make it tough.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I think that would be a very interesting thing to try one day. But I want to also know, like, if I want to become pro and participate in tournaments, which I do, what are some of the mistakes that, or some of the things, like the biggest challenges that pros face, but non-pros don't encounter? Can you think of any?
So mistakes that like pro level players would have, but it wouldn't be like the opportunity to have that wouldn't exist for non-pro players is kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, mistakes or challenges that they have to face. Yeah.
Well, when you're on it, there's like in traditional esports, people consider them like there's like 3 tiers of teams. Like a tier 1 team places high at official events. A tier 2 team would be like on, if there's like a top 8 kind of format, they'd like a tier 1 team would be like the 1 through 4. A tier 2 would be like a 5 through 8, and then a tier 3 would be anyone trying to break into that upper level. In Unite, I think generally it's more like tier 1 and tier 2 because the game is a little bit smaller. And for tier 1 teams, a lot of times it's like, you know, you can be consistently top 4, but how do you make that break into being top 1? And a lot of it comes from consistency of practice, you know, not only doing like team-based practice, but I think what a lot of pro players end up forgetting to do, or players in all levels, is like that individual practice. Like it's important that you go out and you either play solo queue or you play in an environment that's not with your teammates regularly. Because if you're always playing with the same people, it's hard for you to be able to isolate things that you're doing well versus what they're doing well. And if you're only having success with the same people around you, maybe it's because you complement them so well, or maybe it's they're carrying you. You won't really know until you go and make that experience on your own. So a lot of people need to like challenge themselves and have that experience on their own. And for someone that's like trying to break into that, like if you're on the tier 2 side, or if you haven't even ever competed, yeah, I think that individual practice is just as important as a team-based practice. Like, and this isn't, I guess, the same advice that everyone else would give, but I genuinely recommend playing like solo queue Pokemon Unite. It gets a bad rap in terms of the matchmaking, people going, you know, AFK in your games and whatnot. But truly, like if you can get through playing solo queue, you can deal with the stress that strangers put on you. I feel like being able to deal with the stress that people that you know is a lot easier, like a lot easier of a burden to take on. And that's where you get the opportunity to put in as many reps as possible. Like when you're in a team-based environment, you have to spend time organizing people to get on. Someone needs to take a break, which means everyone needs to take a break, or we need to find someone new. If you're playing solo, you can bang out like, you know, 10 games in a couple hours, and it's efficient. So yeah, I think keeping up with that individual practice, and if you don't have people to play with, playing solo queue or like being a part of communities, inviting people to duo queue, like that's kind of how you make connections. And I mean, I mentioned it before, I like to play with people that I consider my friends. And I think if you want to play a competitive game, you have to be somewhat sociable, you have to be good at networking. And a part of that comes with putting yourself out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. And that's one of the challenges I've been facing. I never really was good at like networking in communities online. In person, it's a whole different story, and that's what I really enjoy. Like the face-to-face interaction, talking, connecting, etc. But online, I have this like very strict, like, I don't know, ethos or something, rule for myself in order to minimize time wasted, I don't join a lot of group chats. I don't really spend a lot of time messaging. I try to, if possible, meet with people and spend time with them face to face because it's more efficient. You connect deeper and all that stuff. But obviously in Unite, you have to start online. So I've been joining more of these communities, and I've kind of noticed that it's like, it's also kind of a popularity contest. Would you say that's true or no?
It's hard for me to comment on that because in Unite specifically, I haven't really been on that end of things. Like, I started out Unite, I already had a group of people to play with. Immediately, like, you know, we started streaming the game, and a lot of people were aware of who we were. So I haven't necessarily been on that side, but I've heard things like that. Like, I'm not discounting your experience. I do think a lot of people have had that experience. And that was what the experience was like for me in other esports that I competed. Like in Heroes of the Storm, a game I mentioned earlier, the ranked leaderboard in that game was a lot more to go off of in terms of success than it is for Unite. And there was like a specific leaderboard for solo queue and duo queuers. And I played strictly solo queue. I played 100% support, which was almost unheard of for anyone else on the ladder because people didn't believe you could win games. And I would consistently climb up to like rank 10 on the leaderboard, competing against hundreds of thousands of other people. I would get into games with other pro players every single day. Like every game I was playing was other pro players, and I would routinely win games in the support role. And I genuinely believed, I still think to this day, that I was better than a lot of the other pro players that existed. But I couldn't find the opportunity because like my group of friends, they had a team and they had their team. They weren't going to kick someone just like they weren't, you know, I wouldn't expect them to kick one of our friends to put me on the team. So it's like, okay, I need to find another team. And I was like, oh, I can't make that break. Like everyone already has their crew, and it definitely felt like a popularity contest. So I guess what was different when I came to Unite was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it on my own. Like, not to say that I'm going to be the popular one this time, like, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on my own accord. I'm not going to try. I don't like a lot of people asking like, oh, which team are you joining next? Like which team, like which team, who are you going to join? I'm like, in my mind, I'm never joining a team. The team is being made, whether I'm making it or it's just being made, and I'm going to be a part of it. Like, I don't think I'm any better than anyone else on the team. I don't think I'm any better than anyone else in general. But it's going to be on my own accord this time.
So
which is important. Like you have to make friends. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've always been one of the cool kids in Unite.
I mean, people could say it that way. I don't look at it that way because I think the Unite community is like, it's small, but it's very deep. And there's like a lot of like very popular groups in Unite that I'm not a part of. And it's not like, I don't look at it, I'm like, oh, I wish I was a part of this group, or I wish I was part of that group. I'm happy with, I guess, like the bubble you could say that I have. I have like my group of friends. They have an extended group of friends that I interact with. I play fives with other people occasionally. I have my stream and like a community that I've created. And it's not like, you know, it's not breaking the bank. It's not a huge community, but I'm happy with, like, I'm secure and happy with the place that I have. And I don't need like my circle to be any bigger. And at some point I just had to accept that. Like I was happy with that.
Yeah. You know what they say, it's about quality, not quantity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in this kind of situation, I've been thinking for a while, like maybe I should make my own team, maybe I should join a team, or maybe I should do what you're doing, like, you know, put myself out there as much as possible and like let the universe like bring the team to me and me to the team, like let destiny kind of play out. But on the other hand, I think it's important to get involved with these Unite communities as well, because I started getting more involved and I realized a lot of learning lessons along the way, like how they prefer to play, how they prefer you to play. And so the main roles I play is defender and all-rounder, and you play supporter mostly, right?
That's right.
I noticed when it comes to supporters and defenders, the other people who play the other roles tend to be a lot more strong with their opinions in terms of how supporters or defenders should play. Have you encountered this, or is it just me?
I think there's probably some truth to it, and there's probably like, if you really wanted to like psychoanalyze things, there's probably like on a aggregate, like on a very generalized basis, there's probably like different personality types that gear towards different roles in games, and the type of people, generally speaking, that find the more damage kind of roles fulfilling are probably people that are more strong-minded and more willing to be critical of others. Whereas the polar opposite, like people that are more willing to play supports and defenders are more, they might be less inclined to be people like that. I think that would probably be true for me. Like I play support in pretty much every game that I play, and when Unite came out, it was time for me to play support. I was just like, this is what I'm doing. And being a competitive player, I can definitely be critical of others, but I guess looking back, like the roles that I've had, the damage players definitely do feel more inclined to be that way, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either. It's kind of like, someone has to kind of have a vision of how they want to play the game, and whether it's the support or the defender being like, this is what I need you to do, or the carry or the jungler player being like, this is what I need you to do for me. Someone needs to pull this, someone needs to take charge of the ship essentially. And it just so happens that, a lot of times I think the supports and defenders oftentimes get told kind of what to do. But in my mind, I always like, if I feel like I have a negative experience about, or a bad kind of sour feeling about something, I always try to reframe it in the most positive way, right? So if like my jungler is like, I need you to, what are you doing? Like, why are you not taking this or whatever? It's more like, okay, they're trying to succeed and they need something from me, right? They can't succeed without me, so they need something from me. How can I best deliver that to them? And if we have a disagreement, then that should be allowed, right? Like it should never be like a one-way street. But also, like, if someone is asking something of me, are they right or are they wrong? And if they're right, then like, we can have a conversation about it. If they're wrong, we can also have a conversation about it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to look at it. I think maybe it's your salesperson coming out, where you have to have grits, because as a salesperson, you're going to get a lot of no's, and a lot of people that don't want to buy whatever it is that you're selling. So do you think it might be a good idea for people to take personality tests before they're put on a team?
For the most part, I don't think I really believe in that. Mostly because like everyone is so different. Like, you can look at like, things on a generalized basis and come to different conclusions. But at the end of the day, like everyone is so different. Everyone has something unique about their personality to them that I don't know how helpful that would be. Like if someone wants to do it for fun, sure. I'm sure like you could come to similar conclusions on different people. But no, I think what's important is if you're gonna play on a team or if you're gonna play with people, that you genuinely like them. It's not like Unite is like the NBA or like a professional league where you're making like tens, hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of your career. You're not gonna walk away from playing Unite with more money than you would with like an average career. So if you don't like your day-to-day because of the people around you or people you can't get along with, then you're probably in the wrong group of people. And Unite might be small, there might not be much financial opportunity, but it's big enough that the group of people that will vibe and mesh well with you does exist. It's just a matter of finding them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I have hope for Unite, and I think it will still continue growing. I think the IP from Pokemon is a huge factor there. So I think eventually it will become bigger as it develops and evolves and all that kind of stuff. I had an idea actually recently, and I kind of want to get your opinion on it because I'm currently on a team, but I feel like one of the struggles that we have is isolating specific points of where we can improve, in terms of how a player plays, decisions they make, or whatever. And so this idea essentially is to review a VOD and then to take notes on what they did good or what they did bad in specific moments, and to develop a sort of system like that you would see in a fantasy league. You know what I mean when I say fantasy league, where you choose players and that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, except with Unite players. So that way they can look at the marks that they've received and see if they did well in this way or that way as a form of feedback, but also as a form of tracking how they are improving over time. What do you think of that idea of a Unite Fantasy League type of thing?
I think it could definitely be something that seems fun, and like a way of like gamifying metrics is something that I think is fun. And I think fantasy leagues for traditional sports can be fun too. But at the same time, I think this is something that it took me only once I really had success in Unite to really realize, is that a lot of times like a player's value isn't going to be demonstrated in something that you can track as a KPI or like a performance metric, right? Like you might have a guy on a team who, I'll give you an example. Like, you know, funny enough, both of my defender players that I played a lot with, like Bruv when I was on Nouns Esports in London, and Zugrug, what defender I play with now and I've played with for years. Both of them, one thing that they really bring to the team is that they're really good at tracking the in-game score regardless of having the scoreboard, right? Like when it comes to the last 2 minutes, it says a close battle, and Zugrug says, it's okay, we're winning. A close battle means you don't know if you're winning or losing. You just know there's a point differential of 20 points. But if Zug or Bruv said, we're most likely in the lead, something I could trust them on. And like, could we go through VODs and be like, and write down the times, the points that they, like the differentials that they said, and maybe track that? Maybe, but that isn't a stat that's really going to appear anywhere. And it's a valuable metric. Like people that are good at timing different cooldowns on the other team, people that are good at, you know, recognizing like weak points in a draft or weak points in the middle of a game, and like being able to do that in like, you know, milliseconds. Like these are things that are important that don't show up on stat sheets. And it's something I realized that's probably true in like traditional sports as well, right? And now when I like look at content from like, you know, I'm a big NBA fan, so when I look at like content of basketball players and they talk about players that like, you know, aren't like the famous ones, you know, they'll talk about like role players being like, this guy was so important to this team winning a championship, and I'm like, okay, but the media doesn't, you know, hype that guy didn't score like 40 points in a game, he didn't have 12 blocks or anything. But it's like, you know, every single person, like, you know, on a good team, there's people that offer different things that are really important that don't show up on stat sheets.
Yeah, I mean, as a support player, you probably notice really well, because as a supporter, maybe you're supplying vision, maybe you're blocking the opponent from getting the objective. So you're not securing objectives. And I agree with what you're saying. Like, you can't like tie the success to those really concrete things. Mm-hmm. It should be more things like positioning, if you had good positioning or bad positioning, decision making, maybe, I don't know, efficient use of abilities like you mentioned, that kind of stuff. That's really subjective, really.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, you know, it's like almost being results oriented, and I'm a big believer in like, if you want to do well in competition or anything in life, like not to be 100% tied to the result. And in a Pokemon Unite example, that might be like, you know, after the first jungle clear, the first set of Altaria that gets cleared, if I'm the supporter, I walk and I escort my jungler to his jungle camp, to make sure that in case he gets ganked, I'm already there in preparation if the enemy team is playing something that could be aggressive. It's a very hyper example, but it'll illustrate my point. And let's say I do that 10 games in a row, or 9 games in a row, and the first 9 games, the enemy jungler doesn't gank. But in my mind, I'm like, they could have done it. And I calculate the EV, the expected value, and I'm like, it's better for me to have been here and for him to not come than for me to be somewhere else. And then he did go there, and the game could be completely lost on that one moment. So if you were to look at the result, my positioning in those 9 games might be like 0.1 bad, 0.1 bad, because the result says that I didn't accomplish anything. But the one game that I do it and it matters, that could be like 20x value, and over a longer period of time, that was what was more important, right? Like, and it's playing around like things that, the unknowns or what you can expect to happen, right? And the same way, like on a sales call, like, for example, maybe the type of sales environment you're in, it's really important to not try to make a sale on the first call. You're just trying to develop a relationship, right? And you could look at it and be like, he made 10 outgoing calls, he didn't make a single sale. Maybe person ahead of him did end up selling something. But if after 10 calls, I have like 10 more follow-ups, one of those clients ends up spending 1,000x of what the guy's 10 sales accumulated to, what matters is how much money you ended up making, right? So it's about like not being so tied to the result. And that's where I think, like, even if you follow subjective metrics, like you have to be like so dialed in on calculating the expected value of things that I think even like a top level pro team, like I don't think our team would be capable of managing something like that in terms of tracking those types of metrics, let alone like if it's a newer team. Like if you sat down, I think reviewing is great. Looking at over footage is very, very, very important. But I don't think there would be the nicest would put it, I don't think anyone would be good enough to really be able to lead that charge. Like I think if you had some like a better player VOD review a worser team or like a lower level team, and they were like, oh yeah, we're tracking these metrics, I'd be like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Like you're almost shooting yourself in the foot by over analyzing your games like that. And it's more important, especially when you're newer, to kind of stick to the basics.
Yeah, when you said,
else come in and do it. Yeah.
When you said handling the unknowns and trying to predict the unknowns, and then you mentioned sales, it's almost maybe similar to handling objections before they even become objections.
Exactly.
There's a lot of parallels with sales, as funny as it sounds.
I think so too. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right, and that's the problem with this idea, because it would have to take someone very good at the game to see these things, to mark them, to track them, and to give values to them. Because like giving vision to your team to prevent the enemy jungler from invading, I mean, even if they don't invade, theoretically it should be valuable, because it gives your team certainty that the enemy jungler isn't going to come through that path. And then it can prevent your jungler from losing experience, etc., etc. So anyway, it's just an idea that I had, but I don't know, like if I were to review videos, especially at the level I'm at now, like I don't see certain things that maybe I should see. I did review some VODs with better players, and for the most part, like 95% of the time, I noticed exactly what the other player was going to mention right before he mentioned it. But like this is another parallel that I have, but this time with my English coaching. It's like I noticed it and I knew that it was bad, but he also mentioned it, and the fact that he validated that bad thing is also valuable, because I know that it was bad. Whereas maybe if I was reviewing it by myself, I wasn't certain about it. And that's another reason why people take English lessons with me, because they want to know exactly what they're doing good and bad. They need validation in terms of how they pronounce things, or again, I guess in Unite, the decisions you make, the plays you make, and all that sort of stuff.
No, I totally agree. And I do a lot of coaching. Like I do a lot of VOD review. In fact, after our time here, like I have a scheduled VOD review with the player who's looking to break into the competitive scene. I work with a lot of teams, and that's oftentimes the case. There will be like, yeah, I knew that was wrong, and you mentioning it helped validate it. But I think the value that comes from someone experienced looking it over is they help assess the urgency of the mistakes, right? You might be like, yeah, I knew that was a mistake, but like, is it a 1 out of 10 mistake? Like, you know, I don't play a perfect team. No one plays a perfect team. But what's important is assessing like what was a 10 out of 10 mistake? Like this is non-negotiable. We cannot do this versus it happened. It's not that bad. You know, we can still recover from it. And assessing a value and urgency to those mistakes, I think is where I'm able to provide value to people that I'm coaching. Without that, everyone would be like, yeah, I knew that was a mistake. Like, everything you mentioned, I knew was a mistake. And it's like, okay, well, then why didn't you do it? You know? And it's like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, but I don't have the capabilities to execute, but afterwards I can look at it. And it's like, well, then, you know, you need to understand which mistakes are pressing, right? I'm a big believer in like the economy of time and how much focus you can put on a game. If we were all like ChatGPT, AI, we could play perfectly in Unite. You know, if I had perfect HPM, what I would be doing is I would use my camera to look at every single point in the map, see where someone picked up AOS energy, be able to deduce that based on the vision that I can see who was there, look at place of fog of war. Like you know, if I could perfectly play the game and have perfect control, I could be a lot better of a player. But I know my capabilities. I know how much time as a resource I have and how much focus as a resource I have. So it's the important part is where do I allocate those resources? And I think that's where like a coach or like a reviewer, someone from the outside can be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Also the accountability factor, because they know that they have a call scheduled with you and they took the time to schedule it. Maybe they're paying you and they don't want to let that go to waste. So the fact that you're being there holds them accountable. And if you weren't, maybe they wouldn't review the VOD. Same thing with my English lessons. People wouldn't practice their English if I wasn't there on the other side to hold them accountable. Like, hey, you're not coming to class. Why are you late? Whatever, etc. And I think the important thing in these kind of situations is to adopt that mindset of someone that wants to train to get better, because otherwise you have like your ego that's like protecting you from what's good and what's bad. And I noticed this could be an issue in Unite, but the fact that, you know, it is a competitive game, you're also going to lose inevitably. It kind of has to hurt your ego sometimes. And that's the thing I actually like about this, similar to sales. Like, people are going to say no. And on one hand, you got to have like belief in yourself, maybe even an ego. But on the other hand, you also cannot, because you got to be willing and able to evaluate what you're doing wrong and not make excuses, to change and to adapt.
I agree. I think for me, like, I think I'm not alone in this. Like, what's fun about challenging yourself in life is the challenge. Like, Unite's not a fun game only when you win. Like, winning isn't the most important thing. If winning is all that mattered, then the best game in the world would be flipping a coin, because you know, you get the satisfaction of winning guaranteed over time 50% of the time, and it's like so much fun. Oh, heads I win, tails you win, heads I win.
That's all luck.
Right, exactly, right. And when you can insert agency in terms of performing well and having, you know, the opportunity to lose and to grow from that's what makes Unite or anything in life that's challenging fun, whether it's like sales, you said, or competitive games.
So what would you say is the most difficult, or has been the most difficult part in your Unite career overall?
I think I've mentioned this a lot. It's a question people have asked me before, but it's something that sticks with me forever. Is year one was probably the time where everyone expected the team that I was on to perform the best. We were on a team that, you know, had like something like an 80% win rate in community tournaments. The first official tournament, we went completely undefeated through the qualifiers, and the main tournament ended up winning it. And from there, like, you know, we won a couple other tournaments. It wasn't obviously as dominant, but it came down to the regional finals in year one in June, and that coming top 2 in the regional finals was the only chance you had to make the world championships. And, you know, everyone expected that we would be at Worlds, and everyone expected that we would either win Worlds or be one of the teams that had like a really good showing. And that regional final tournament, we ended up placing like top 4, which was not enough to qualify for the World Championships. So we went from a team that everyone expected to win everything the entire year to not even being present at the World Championships that year. And it was a very, very difficult time for me. Like, obviously, I didn't have that same level of expectation of winning as everyone in the community did. I think it's unrealistic to, like, you have a drive that I can win, I'm going to win everything. But you also need to be a competitor first, and you can't just be like, I'm just gonna win. Like, I don't even need to try. Like, we tried our hearts out. Mistakes happened. A lot of different factors could be at play there. But ultimately, we didn't achieve what we set out to achieve, and it was heartbreaking. Obviously, it took me a while, like a couple days, to even get over it, to be honest. But now looking back at it, like, channeling that energy was what was important for me to bounce back. In the second year, we played at our first in-person event. It was the first ever in-person regional event. Was on stage, had the opportunity, and I'm very proud of it, to win that tournament. It's a trophy I have somewhere back in my case over there, which I'm really happy about. And since then, I've had a lot of wins and I've had a lot of losses. Didn't win this World Championship this past year. But I think having that first big loss early on in my career was like really, really humbling. And it's something that I take with me every single place I go. Like, this year, I have a fire in my heart to be able to win another in-person event. I haven't since 2023. It's been 2 going on 3 years now. The fire to win the World Championships. But that comes with me knowing what I need to do on a day-to-day basis. Like, it's not going to be day of the tournament, I turn it up to 100 and I do it. It's every day you have to be doing your best and grinding slowly and quietly.
Yeah, I think here there's a lot of parallels with like Olympic athletes or athletes that perform in like really like sporty competitions, because in order to get to the Olympics, you gotta train yourself every day, be consistent, have this routine, so that when you do get to that point, you're not like, it's not any different, like you've done this a million times before, you know exactly what to do. But the thing about these tournaments is that I've heard it is different, and that's probably a point that some people struggle with, because you are on a stage, you're in front of a lot of people. Maybe the other team is playing mind games with you before the match. Is there actually some things that are different in that regard? Like, is there more pressure that might affect teams?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of people that feel that level of pressure when you are playing on stage or in an in-person event, whatever it might be. For me personally, usually I have like a little bit of nerves in my first game of a tournament, but it settles down after that. And a lot of it comes from, I don't know where I heard it. It was long before I started playing competitive games. But there's a quote that I heard where, if you're ever feeling nervous, you're not actually nervous. If you're feeling anxious or nervous, you're just excited. And your body is, fighting that back by telling you you're nervous. But what it is you're excited. You're excited that, my hundreds and thousands of hours of practice has accumulated to this one moment. I really want to do well. I'm excited to be in this moment. And I think like the moment I have that kind of like butterflies in my stomach, that anxious kind of feeling, I just close my eyes for a second. I'm like, I'm just excited. And all of it goes away.
Yeah, it comes back to framing it in a good way.
Exactly. It's all about reframing. And it's different for everyone. Like, some people get really nervous when they're on stage, and that's okay too. I think if you're nervous, it means that you want, you're afraid to fail, or there's some part of you that has a drive to do well, which is important. But it definitely can be a detriment. Like, I've seen players who play really well offline, when they get to that online stage, because they're nervous, because they're in an in-person environment, they perform a lot worse. and that's like another challenge. It's another skill you have to develop in order to be one of the best, for sure.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're also streaming kind of helps because it's like a stepping stone to being in the public, because you're streaming, everyone can tune in, they can go into your chat, say whatever, and that anyone and everyone can watch. So I think that's why a lot of people should also be streaming, even if they don't have their microphone on, because at the very least you can save your VODs and you can review them. I think the replay system in Unite is actually broken right now. So
it's not very good. No.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a good way of reviewing your VODs. And I think just having this like kind of mindset that that anyone can be watching, it kind of changes maybe how you play. Because when you know that anyone and everyone can watch, maybe you make decisions differently. Maybe you hold yourself more accountable to not just play just to play, but you're playing to improve or to win. So I think that's another thing that a lot of people should be doing. That's something that I've been doing. Just kind of when I play, I stream. But of course, I don't expect anything out of it. I'm just kind of doing it for that kind of accountability factor type of thing. But I do go back and I review my gameplay every once in a while. And it definitely does improve. But, that stuff takes time. Okay,
sure.
What about on the other hand? What's the most memorable experience in your Unite career? Something that is also going to stick with you forever, but in a good way.
I kind of alluded to it earlier, but in 2023, the NAIC North American International Championships in Ohio, it was year 2 of playing the game. We hadn't won any of the monthly cups, but we had won a big online tournament, the AOS Cup, and it culminated to us playing the regional finals in person. And we had a bit of a shaky start. We ended up getting knocked down to the lower bracket by LG, by Luminosity Gaming at the time, and it was funny. Like they had beaten us a couple of times throughout the year. LG had, and we played a best of 3 against them in the winners bracket. We won 1 of the 3 games. We lost 2 that they knocked us down. But in that 1 game that we beat them, I was like, I think we got them. Like something kind of just clicked. Like I at that moment I knew we were gonna win the whole thing, and it was like a gut feeling I had. I didn't like express it, but like I was just like, I think I figured them. I think we figured them out. So we run through the lower bracket. We end up taking down ASU, like another really strong team. We get another chance to play Luminosity, and we. So because we came from the lower bracket, we have to win 2 series. They only have to win 1 series to win the grand finals. We 3-0 them in the first set, and then we take the next set 3-1. So we end up winning like 6-1 in the grand finals to take the whole thing and become the North American champions. And it was just like, everything had come to that moment. Like it was like all the losses that we had, the missing the world championships the year prior, losing to them throughout the year, like, and finally like being able to be on stage, experience that I wanted to do for my entire life, like to be able to be on stage and compete and to be able to win in my absolute first one, to raise the trophy in front of the fans. There's parts of it that like I don't even remember, but I remember like we won, the staff had to escort us to like an area to collect our winnings and whatnot, and as we were going, like the amount of people cheering us on, like trying to get a photo, like all of that, like it was just such a memorable experience. Like I felt like I was finally able to deliver like a promise I had to people that supported me, and it's a great feeling that will stick to me for the rest of my life. And for a while it was like, I don't know if I'll be able to ever outdo that. Like, I started to doubt myself.
Is that when you peaked?
Is that like, do I ask myself, is that when I peaked? But, I've had a lot of success since then as well. And for me now, like the ultimate goal is to not only win like a in-region championship, but the world championships. And I think until I do that, I can't rest easy. I can't truly feel proud of what I've done. Is kind of what I tell myself now. I don't know how I'll feel about that in the future, but that's my goal now. Yeah.
I think here you just gotta adopt the sales mindset. You just gotta keep on trying, have grit. But
Yeah.
before I go on to the next question, I want to ask, like, I know it's been 1 hour. I'm not sure if you have any other commitments after this, but I still have a bunch of questions that we can touch on if you still have time.
We can go a little bit over at 30 minutes on the hour. In the next hour, I do have a coaching session, but I'm good for another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. So the other question I had, I got different opinions on this one, so I want to see what you think about it. It's what's your opinion on a player developing their brand? Like as a player, as a pro competitor, do you think it's important? And if it is, how is it important for them?
You know, I think the reason maybe you got mixed answers is because I don't think there is a right answer to it. Like, it depends on what you want, right? Like, do you want to be able to convert what you're doing as a competitive player into more of a career? Are you strictly focused on the only thing you really want to do is to compete and to win? And that's all that matters to you? Then no, it's not necessarily important. There's no like, you know, hard, fast rule that this is what you need to do. But for me, you know, before I got into a sales background, before anything, I went to school with the intention to be a teacher. I didn't end up fulfilling that. I wanted something more on the competitive side, which is why I ended up getting into sales and now esports. But that like desire to be an educator stuck with me, and it always has been. So I stream because I want to educate. I want to share. I have a passion for what I do. I really love the game, and I like sharing the things that I've learned with other people. And as a result of that, almost accidentally, I've developed a brand. Since starting it, it's been intentional. Like I create content. You know, I wish to improve my brand, I guess you could say. But a lot of it is because it's my way of financially supporting myself to allow myself to compete. For other people, they would rather work a 9 to 5 or work whatever part-time they can, subsidize that money for their competition. Maybe they have support from their family, whatever it might be. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
It depends on what your goals are.
And I'm also the same when it comes to the educational aspect. I mentioned before, I have a course, it's on Udemy, on how to rank up in Unite, but it's only how to get into master rank. And I recently published a different course, my third one, on something unrelated. Actually, it's related to co-living. I mentioned it before. And I was thinking, okay, if I were to make another course on something, what would I make it on? And I've been kind of writing down ideas, and the one that I think I'm leaning most towards is on, again, Pokemon Unite, but this time on how to get to 1600 in ranked. And I think it could actually be pretty fun to collaborate, make a few lectures together, specifically for this course, because there's some concepts, I have it written down here in my notes, that I think are important in order to get up to the next level, like how to be proactive instead of being reactive, and the like positioning aspect, but on a deeper level, because there's a lot of like MOBA theory that applies to Unite that has already been well known before Unite was ever a thing. But I think in order to get up to 1600 for some players, they really need to like have their eyes opened, if you know what I mean. Like maybe it takes them paying money for them to be receptive to the information that they're receiving. Because I noticed in education, if something is free, people don't value it as much.
I can see that, yeah.
I think this also applies in sales.
For sure.
So have you thought of ever doing like a course like that in Unite?
I've done things like that before. For me, this is just a personal philosophy. If I'm ever making just strict content, I keep that completely free. So if I'm making a guide, or I have a series on my channel called Inder University, where I upload different gameplay mechanics or whatever the case might be. I did one recently on the new item that came out, Big Root.
Yeah.
I keep those free. And in terms of doing like courses, what I'm selling is like my time. So I've done like a draft class, for example, where I had like 20 people register. It was a paid class, and I delivered a class on how to draft for ranked. But it also allowed the people that did subscribe, that paid for it, to be able to ask me questions in real time. Not to say that there isn't, I definitely agree with you. Like, a lot of times if the content is free, people might not take it as seriously, and sometimes they need that accountability aspect of, hey, I spent my money on this, so I need to gain value out of it. But because I also balance that with me being a streamer and a content creator, I have to evaluate which parts, like what I'm gonna monetize my audience and what I'm gonna offer for free to drive in that. So normally when I do content, I've done it for free. And yeah, that's just been my philosophy.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good strategy, especially with certain types of content that's, let's say, for a wider audience. And if you want to niche down something that's more specific and more technical or more complicated, something that requires more attention, something like a paid course is usually, in my experience, is usually better. But apart from that, like the fact that someone takes a course, they go through all the lectures, they take the quizzes, maybe they do some test assignments or whatever, they have to commit a certain amount of time in order to complete it. And at the end, they get a certification. And I think the benefit in that situation is that players who have that certification can have like a, let's say, a shortcut to finding a team in some way. Because it shows that they are committed, or at least they have committed a certain amount of time to get these basics down. And then the next level could be something more personalized, like what you're talking about, where people can ask questions and show you stuff that you give specific feedback on. Because it's similar to like how I teach English. I could put out videos out there and give you tips on how to speak English and how to be confident, how to pronounce stuff. But apart from the fact that there's already a million videos, what people really value is like the targeted stuff. However, before people can even come to me, they have to be qualified. So this ties into sales now. They have to want it badly enough. And in order for them to want it badly enough, they have to go through this very specific process. They have to go on my website, then they have to answer some questions, and then they blah, 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 blah. So I think on one hand, making it difficult to get there shows that they are serious. And, once they do make it through, that because they've done the course, they understand those specific concepts. And you can refer to them when you're interacting with them later and be like, remember in the course when we talked about this? Well, here's where you should be improving on, this and that. Anyway, it's just an idea for now. I'm focusing on other stuff, but ideally, it would be really fun to collaborate with other pros, with other Unite creators. And since you're both a pro, a streamer, and what's it called, a content creator, then I think it could really be like a win-win-win-win type of situation. But anyway, it's just an idea. Maybe I can plant that seed in your head and let it grow for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something we can talk about.
Last question that I want to ask. What are some of your favorite unorthodox strategies? Maybe some builds that you like to play that maybe your teammates don't like to see when you play them, or some or some strategies that you get a lot of flack on. Like for example, when Mewtwo X was nerfed after a while and it wasn't ridiculously OP, I started playing it with XP share. And all of my teammates got tilted in solo queue. Like, they would just go AFK and stuff like that. They would run around in circles. But then one time, XP Share Mewtwo X appeared in a tournament. And ever since then, no more getting tilted, So, go ahead.
I have this funny build that I play. I play it on stream. It's called the quarterback. It's playing EXP Share on Machamp. And the idea is that, you're relatively tanky, you have a decent last hit, and then when you get level 5, you have submission, so kind of like a defender. You run in unstoppable and you can pick someone up, and you can set up, you can be like an engage or an initiator. And I call it the quarterback. I'm pretty serious about winning, so I don't really play it that much when I'm playing with my team. If we're playing, on the ladder or things are getting a little bit more silly, I'll be like, it's time to bring out the quarterback. And this past year, when I was competing at, I think it was NAIC again, we had a match on stage. We had already qualified to the next day. We were going up against a team that also, wasn't, there necessarily to play that seriously. They were kind of more there for fun. And in our second game, I brought out the quarterback, and I went back to check the VOD. Everyone was going crazy in the chat. It's a fun build. It's silly. But I like to experiment with, EX share on different things can be fun. Like Mewtwo X before it got nerfed, it's definitely something that was fun, not that bad. Seen people have some success with it on Darkrai. But my favorite's got to be Machamp, the quarterback.
So what's the build there? XP share, Floatstone, maybe?
XP share, Floatstone, and then I bounce around the last item. Usually I just end up playing Focus Band, just so I'm a little bit tankier, and I can invade and have that kind of sustain. And then I normally play X Speed or Eject as well for my battle item.
Yeah, I know. I've been playing some matches, and there's this player. I think his username, his handle is like Machamp only or something like that. Oh no, Potion Machamp. He runs Potion on Machamp, XP share. I'm pretty sure he has Floatstone, and I think his last one might be Score Shield. So he's like running around, backcapping, and just like essentially doing what Greedent would do.
Yeah.
Much.
It's a fun way to play the character, and I don't think it's necessarily that bad. Like, maybe might not be like the most competitive strategy, but Machamp's got some interesting quirks about it. The way submission works, it's like one of very few moves in the game that actually can interrupt characters that are hindrance resistant. So you can flip like a Charizard that's in their Unite, or you can cancel Miraidon's Unite move with just submission. So there's some counterplay there, and in a perfect world, it might be like the best character in a draft once in a while as well.
Could be. But I guess talking about draft would be a discussion for another time. And that's something that I'd really want to also discuss. But maybe another time. I think that's my last question for today. Anyway, thank you so much for meeting with me, Inder. I really appreciate it. And it's always a good time.
Yeah, thanks for the chat. Thanks for giving me the platform to talk about the things that I love. I love talking about Pokemon Unite. I could do it all day. I do it all day. That's what I do.
I could really say that it is really easygoing talking to you and asking questions, and very conversational. And that's what I do all day with my other job, my main job. So yeah, good job. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time as well.
If you ever want to come again on the podcast in a future episode, you're always welcome. For now, I'm just trying to look for more people to appear on the podcast. So if anyone's watching and is interested in appearing, shoot me a message, Inder. If you know anyone that might be interested, let them know, let me know, and we'll set something up.
Awesome. Yeah. I wish you best of luck. It's a good experience. So thank you for the invite.
For sure. Well, that's pretty much it for the episode. Thank you again.